My friends, please subscribe to my channel, like the video and write a comment, and we begin. Part 1. The reading of the will expanded. The air in the lawyer's office hung heavy, thick with the scent of aged paper, polished wood, and the unspoken anxieties that simmered beneath the surface of our strained family dynamic. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long, skeletal shadows across the meticulously manicured lawn, a fitting reflection of the impending darkness that was about to descend upon my life. Mr. Henderson, a portly man with a perpetually mournful expression etched into the lines of his face, sat behind a massive mahogany desk, his fingers steepled in front of him like a solemn monument. His dark suit, impeccably tailored but undeniably dated, seemed to absorb all the light in the room, leaving him shrouded in an aura of somber authority. He was the gatekeeper to our parents' legacy, the arbiter of their final wishes, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding as he cleared his throat, preparing to read the will. My parents, Sarah and Thomas Blackwood, bless their dearly departed souls, had finally succumbed to the relentless march of time. Their passing, while not entirely unexpected, had left a gaping void in my life, a void filled with grief, regret, and a nagging sense of uncertainty. While I genuinely mourned their loss, a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach, a tight ball of apprehension that refused to dissipate. I knew what was coming. I had sensed it for years, the subtle favoritism, the unspoken preferences, the pervasive feeling that I was always playing second fiddle to my golden brother Mark. My parents had always favored Mark. He was the epitome of everything they valued: ambition, success, and unwavering conformity. He was the golden child, the charismatic athlete who excelled in every sport he tried, the handsome charmer who effortlessly attracted attention and adoration, the Wharton Business School graduate who had followed in my father's footsteps, climbing the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency. I, on the other hand, I was Amelia, the artist, the dreamer, the free spirit who had always marched to the beat of her own drum, regardless of societal expectations or parental disapproval. I was the one who had dared to pursue a career in the arts, a path that my parents viewed as frivolous and impractical. I was the one who had chosen passion over profit, creativity over conformity, and independence over security. I was the one who had never quite lived up to their expectations, never quite earned their unconditional approval. Mark, sitting beside me in his impeccably tailored suit, his posture ramrod straight, barely reacted as Mr. Henderson began to read the will. A slight nod, a barely perceptible tightening of his jaw, a subtle flicker of smug satisfaction in his eyes. It was as if he already knew what was coming, as if he had been briefed beforehand, as if he was simply going through the motions, awaiting the inevitable confirmation of his privileged status. Mr. Henderson continued, his voice growing even more somber, his eyes scanning the document with meticulous precision. To my son, Mark Blackwood, I bequeath the fully furnished and equipped executive office building located at 12 Oak Street, including all associated business contracts and clientele. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. The office building, a prestigious location in the heart of downtown, a symbol of success and power. A lucrative business venture that had been painstakingly built over decades, now handed over to Mark on a silver platter, without a single drop of sweat or a single moment of risk. Of course, it was all so predictable, so utterly expected. Mark was the heir apparent, the chosen successor, the rightful inheritor of my parents' empire. It was the natural order of things, the way it had always been, the way it would always be. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat again, drawing my attention back to the present. He paused for a moment, as if gathering his strength, and then delivered the final blow, the one that confirmed my worst fears and solidified my status as the black sheep of the Blackwood family. To my daughter, Amelia Blackwood, I bequeath the property located at the edge of the Blackwood estate, commonly known as the Blackwood Barn, in its current condition. My heart sank, plummeting like a lead weight into the depths of despair. The Blackwood Barn, a dilapidated, century-old structure that had been falling apart for decades. A decaying relic that was more trouble than it was worth. A crumbling testament to my parents' indifference, a symbol of my perceived failure. It was a deliberate insult, a thinly veiled message that said, "You are not worthy, Amelia. You are not as valuable as your brother. You are not deserving of our respect or our admiration." He smirked. Mark, sitting beside me, his eyes averted, his expression carefully neutral. But I saw it. A subtle, almost imperceptible twist of his lips, a fleeting flicker of amusement in his eyes. A smirk that spoke volumes about his smug satisfaction, his quiet triumph, his unwavering belief in his own superiority. He knew what this meant. He knew that the fancy office was a launching pad for success, a guaranteed path to wealth and power. He knew that the dilapidated barn was a burden, a liability, a useless pile of decaying wood and crumbling stone. He knew that our parents had once again chosen him, had once again affirmed his status as the golden child, while relegating me to the sidelines, forever relegated to playing second fiddle in the Blackwood family drama. Part 2. The barn's secret expanded. I tried to maintain a semblance of composure as we left the lawyer's office, but the anger was a burning ember in my chest, threatening to ignite into a raging inferno. The injustice of it all, the blatant favoritism, the sheer audacity of my parents' final act of blatant disregard, it was all too much to bear. I mumbled a perfunctory goodbye to Mr. Henderson, my voice barely above a whisper, and stalked out of the office, desperate to escape the stifling atmosphere and the judgmental gazes of the Blackwood ancestors who seemed to be staring down at me from the walls. Mark followed close behind, his footsteps echoing across the polished marble floor, his presence a constant reminder of my perceived failure. I could feel his gaze on me, a mixture of pity and triumph, a subtle expression that only fueled my resentment. "A barn, Mark?" "Seriously?" I finally blurted out, unable to contain my anger any longer. "They gave you a state-of-the-art office building, and they left me a crumbling barn? Is this some kind of sick joke?" Mark shrugged, his eyes averted, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He seemed almost embarrassed, as if he knew that the inheritance was unfair, but was unwilling to acknowledge the depths of my disappointment. "Hey, it's real estate, Amelia," he said, his voice too casual, too dismissive. "You could probably sell it. Someone might want to tear it down and build something new. There are always developers looking for land on the edge of town. Sell it." I snapped, my voice rising in pitch. "To who? Demolition experts? It's a dilapidated ruin, Mark. It's falling apart. It's practically worthless." He didn't respond. He simply patted me on the shoulder, a perfunctory gesture that felt patronizing and insincere, and offered a half-hearted "sorry, Amelia," before hurrying off towards his sleek, black sports car, his new office, his new life. He was eager to escape, to distance himself from my disappointment, to bask in the glow of his inheritance without having to confront the consequences of his privilege. Days turned into weeks. I avoided the Blackwood barn, unable to face the reality of my inheritance, unable to confront the crumbling symbol of my perceived worthlessness. I threw myself into my art, burying my emotions in paint and canvas, trying to create something beautiful out of the ugliness that surrounded me. But the barn haunted my thoughts, a constant reminder of my parents' rejection. I knew I couldn't ignore it forever. I knew I had to deal with it, to face it, to decide what to do with the dilapidated relic that had been thrust upon me. Finally, driven by a sense of obligation and a simmering resentment, I drove out to the property, steeling myself for the inevitable disappointment. The Blackwood barn was located at the very edge of the estate, nestled in a secluded corner of the property, surrounded by overgrown weeds and tangled vines. It was a place that my parents had always neglected, a place that they had seemed to actively avoid. The barn was even worse than I remembered. The roof was caving in, the walls were rotting, and the entire structure was overrun with weeds and vines that snaked their way through the cracks in the wood, threatening to consume it entirely. It was a disaster, a crumbling ruin that seemed beyond repair. As I cautiously wandered through the dilapidated interior, my footsteps echoing across the decaying wooden floor, a glimmer of something caught my eye. Tucked away in a dusty, cobweb-covered corner, hidden beneath a pile of decaying hay and forgotten farm equipment, was a locked wooden chest. The chest was old and weathered, its wooden surface cracked and faded, its metal hinges rusted and corroded. It was heavy, solid, and imbued with a sense of mystery, as if it had been guarding its secrets for decades. My heart quickened, a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. Could this be it? Could this be the key to turning this inherited burden into something worthwhile? Could this dilapidated barn be hiding a secret, a treasure? Part 3. The chest's discovery expanded. The heavy padlock, green with corrosion and stiff with disuse, stubbornly resisted my initial attempts to open it. I tugged and strained, my fingers aching from the effort, but the lock remained stubbornly sealed, guarding its secrets with silent defiance. I realized brute force alone wouldn't suffice. Frustrated but undeterred, I drove back into town, my mind racing with possibilities. I considered hiring a locksmith, but the thought of entrusting the chest to a stranger, potentially revealing its contents before I even had a chance to examine them myself, made me uneasy. Finally, I decided on a more DIY approach. I borrowed a crowbar from Mr. Henderson, a gruff but surprisingly helpful neighbor who lived on the adjacent property. He eyed me with a mixture of curiosity and amusement as I explained my situation, offering unsolicited advice on the best way to tackle the rusty lock. "Be careful with that thing, Amelia," he cautioned, handing me the crowbar with a knowing wink. "You don't want to damage whatever treasures are hidden inside. Might be worth more than you think." His words fueled my anticipation, adding a layer of excitement to the already charged atmosphere. Back at the barn, armed with the crowbar and a renewed sense of determination, I carefully positioned the tool beneath the hasp of the padlock. The air was thick with dust and the musty scent of decaying wood, making it difficult to breathe. I took a deep breath, steeled my nerves, and applied steady pressure, bracing myself against the decaying wall. The metal groaned in protest, its rusted surface scraping against the wood. With a final Herculean effort, I heaved on the crowbar, feeling the metal give way with a satisfying crack. The rusty lock sprung open, its broken remains falling to the dusty floor with a dull thud. A wave of anticipation washed over me, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was it, the moment of truth. I wiped my sweaty palms on my jeans, steeled my nerves, and slowly, reverently, lifted the heavy lid of the wooden chest. The hinges creaked in protest, their rusty surfaces groaning after decades of disuse. The air inside the chest was stale and musty, carrying the scent of aged wood, dried paper, and forgotten memories. My heart pounded in my chest as I peered inside, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. The chest was filled, not with gold or jewels or some other glittering treasure, but with artwork. Dozens of meticulously crafted sketches, charcoal drawings, and watercolors, neatly stacked and carefully preserved, as if they had been waiting patiently for someone to discover them. My initial disappointment quickly gave way to a sense of awe and wonder. The artwork was extraordinary, filled with a raw emotion and a technical skill that belied their humble materials. The sketches depicted the Blackwood estate, its surrounding landscapes, its inhabitants, and its history with remarkable detail and a hauntingly beautiful clarity. There were charcoal portraits of stoic farmers, watercolor landscapes of rolling hills bathed in golden light, and intricate sketches of the Blackwood Manor, its imposing architecture rendered with breathtaking precision. The artwork captured the essence of the Blackwood estate, its beauty, its history, and its hidden secrets. As I carefully examined each piece, a name began to echo in my mind, a whisper from the depths of my family history. Eleanor Blackwood. Eleanor Blackwood was a distant relative, a woman shrouded in mystery and legend. She was a renowned artist who had lived on the Blackwood estate in the early 20th century, known for her exquisite landscapes and her hauntingly beautiful portraits. But she was also a recluse, a solitary figure who had shunned society and dedicated her life to her art. She had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers and rumors, her artwork lost to time and forgotten by all but a few. And then I saw the signature, scrawled in elegant cursive in the corner of each piece, Eleanor Blackwood. A shiver ran down my spine. Could these sketches be her lost masterpieces? Could the dilapidated barn be hiding a secret that could rewrite history, resurrect a forgotten artist, and transform the Blackwood estate into a cultural landmark? I knew in that moment that I had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary. The Dilapidated Barn. Part 4. Mark's sudden interest expanded. The next few days were a whirlwind of research and discovery. I became obsessed with Eleanor Blackwood, devouring every scrap of information I could find about her life, her art, and her mysterious disappearance. I spent hours poring over old newspaper articles, genealogical records, and art history journals, piecing together the fragments of her story like a complex jigsaw puzzle. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that I had stumbled upon something truly significant. Eleanor Blackwood was a visionary artist, a talent lost to time, whose work deserved to be recognized and celebrated. The sketches I had found in the barn were not just beautiful pieces of art. They were historical documents, revealing a glimpse into the past, a portrait of a bygone era. I also began to investigate the potential value of the artwork, consulting with online art appraisers and sending them scanned copies of the sketches. The initial responses were promising, hinting at significant financial value, especially if the artwork could be authenticated and attributed to Eleanor Blackwood with certainty. As I became increasingly engrossed in the mystery of Eleanor Blackwood and the potential value of her artwork, I noticed a subtle but unmistakable change in Mark. He suddenly became interested in the barn. He started calling me more often, inquiring about my progress with the property, his voice overly cheerful, his questions pointed and persistent. He even offered to help me clean it up, a proposition that was both suspicious and completely out of character. Mark had never shown the slightest interest in the barn before, viewing it as a useless eyesore, a symbol of my perceived failure. His sudden enthusiasm was jarring, unsettling, and reeked of ulterior motives. I became increasingly wary, my trust in my brother eroding with each passing day. I sensed that he knew something, that he had somehow discovered my secret, and that he was plotting to take advantage of my discovery for his own gain. One afternoon, as I was carefully cataloging the sketches, meticulously documenting each piece, Mark showed up unannounced, his sleek sports car rumbling to a halt outside the barn. He strode towards me with an unnerving confidence, his eyes gleaming with an unnatural intensity, his smile too wide and too forced. "So, Amelia, how's the barn coming along?" he asked, his voice dripping with false concern, his gaze sweeping across the interior of the dilapidated structure. "Find anything interesting? Unearth any hidden treasures?" I hesitated, suddenly wary of his motives. He was fishing, I could sense it. He was trying to gauge my knowledge, to assess the extent of my discovery without revealing his own hand. "Just a lot of dust and cobwebs, Mark," I replied, my voice equally casual, my expression carefully neutral. "Nothing you'd be interested in. It's just a crumbling ruin, a lost cause. I'm thinking of just selling it for scrap." He chuckled, a low, unsettling sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Don't be so sure, Amelia," he said, his gaze lingering on the chest filled with Eleanor Blackwood's artwork. "You never know what treasures might be hidden in those old walls. You might be surprised by what you find." He paused, his eyes locking with mine, his expression suddenly serious. "You know, I've been thinking," he added, his voice taking on a more persuasive tone. "Maybe we should sell the barn together. Pool our resources. Work as a team. After all, we're family." His sudden interest, his unsolicited offer of assistance, his carefully crafted words, it all confirmed my. Part 5. The Real Inheritance, expanded and concluded. His offer hung in the air, thick with unspoken intentions. I knew I couldn't trust Mark. He had always been envious of my creativity, my passion for art, viewing it as a weakness, a frivolous pursuit that was beneath him. But now he saw it as a potential source of profit, a way to capitalize on my accidental discovery and boost his own already considerable wealth. The blood was in the water, and like a shark, Mark was circling. His insincerity was palpable. He'd never lifted a finger to help me before, always quick to dismiss my artistic endeavors as a waste of time. Now, suddenly, he was interested in pooling our resources and working together as a team. It was laughable. That night, fueled by a potent cocktail of suspicion and simmering resentment, I decided to take a leap of faith. I contacted a reputable art appraiser I had found online, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Reed who specialized in early 20th century American art. I explained my situation, emphasizing the secrecy and the urgent need for a discreet and reliable evaluation. Dr. Reed, intrigued by the mystery and the potential for a significant discovery, agreed to meet me at the barn the following morning. She arrived promptly, her eyes gleaming with excitement, her demeanor a refreshing contrast to the calculated manipulations of my brother. After a brief inspection of the sketches, her eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She carefully examined each piece, her fingers tracing the delicate lines, her face a mixture of awe and wonder. "These are authentic Eleanor Blackwood sketches," she breathed, her voice hushed with reverence. "There's no doubt in my mind. The style, the technique, the subject matter, it all points to her hand. These are a significant find, Amelia. They could be worth millions." Her words confirmed my suspicions, sending a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had been right all along. The dilapidated barn wasn't just a symbol of my parents' rejection. It was a treasure trove, a hidden portal to a world of artistic brilliance and untapped potential. The next morning, I confronted Mark at his fancy new office, the opulent space feeling sterile and soulless compared to the rustic charm of the barn. He was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, his posture radiating arrogance and self-satisfaction, a smug smile playing on his lips. "I know," I said, my voice calm but firm, my eyes locking with his. "I know about Eleanor Blackwood. And I know you want to steal her artwork from me." Mark feigned surprise, his eyebrows arching in mock innocence, his smile widening into a disingenuous grin. "Amelia, what are you talking about?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I have no idea what you're referring to." "Don't play dumb, Mark," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "You knew about the sketches all along, didn't you? That's why you were so eager to help me with the barn. You saw the potential for profit, and you couldn't resist trying to take advantage of me, just like you always have." He sighed, his facade crumbling, his true nature finally revealed. He leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening, his eyes filled with a cold, calculating glint. "Okay, fine," he conceded, his voice devoid of all pretense. "So what? They're just a bunch of old drawings. What are you going to do with them? Frame them and hang them on your wall?" "They're worth a lot of money, Amelia. Money we could both use." "Money I could use, Mark," I corrected, emphasizing the possessive pronoun, my voice laced with defiance. "They were left to me, not you. And unlike you, I don't value art solely for its monetary worth. I value it for its beauty, its history, and its ability to connect with people on a deeper level." I paused, letting the implication hang in the air, savoring his discomfort, his frustration, his growing realization that his carefully laid plans were about to unravel. "You see, Mark," I said, a smile spreading across my face, a genuine smile of triumph and liberation. "What my parents didn't tell you is that the Blackwood estate isn't just about the office building. It's about the land beneath it. And all the mineral rights to the property, the oil, the gas, the valuable resources that lie hidden beneath the surface, all belong to the owner of the Blackwood barn. That clause was written into the original deed, a failsafe to protect the family's legacy from being exploited by short-sighted fools." His face went white, his jaw slackening, his eyes widening with stunned disbelief. The smugness, the arrogance, the self-assuredness, all vanished, replaced by a look of abject horror. "The barn," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "The barn? It's worth more than the office?" I nodded, reveling in his discomfiture, watching as his carefully constructed world crumbled around him. "Much more, Mark. The oil companies have been trying to lease the mineral rights for years, offering astronomical sums. But my parents always refused, clinging to the land like a sacred relic. Turns out, they knew more than they let on." I paused, letting the weight of the revelation sink in, letting him fully grasp the magnitude of his loss. "Turns out, Mark, my inheritance wasn't a burden after all. It was a key. The key to unlocking the true potential of the Blackwood estate. The key to securing my financial independence. And the key to finally proving my worth, not just to my parents, but to myself." I rose from my chair, my body radiating.